We are reading in the book Kabbalah for the Beginner, page 37, Introduction to the Book of Zohar, item 1. We are reminding you that you can watch our lessons and ask questions live at www.kab.tv/eng. Selected questions that are relevant to the topic will be aired. Kabbalah for the Beginner, page 37, Introduction to the Book of Zohar, item 1. In this introduction, I would like to clarify matters that are seemingly simple, matters that everyone fumbles with, and which much ink has been spilled over in attempting to clarify, yet we have not reached a concrete and sufficient knowledge of them. And here are the questions. So he thinks there are questions that are very important, and he thinks people don't understand them, although they've been discussing them for thousands of years. And this is why he wants to clarify them, so there will be no doubt about it or misunderstanding. 1. What is our essence? 2. What is our role in the long chain of reality, which we are but small links of? 3. When we examine ourselves, we find ourselves to be as corrupted and as low as can be. And when we examine the operator who made us, we are compelled to be at the highest degree, for there is none such praiseworthy as him. For it is necessary that only perfect operations will stem from a perfect operator. 4. Our mind necessitates that he is utterly benevolent, beyond compare. How then did he create so many creatures that suffer and agonize all through their lives? Is it not the nature of the good to do good, or at least not harm so? 5. How is it possible that the infinite, that has neither beginning nor end, will produce finite, mortal, and transient creatures? So there are questions that are about our essence. Is there a purpose to our lives in this long history? Not a person's private life, but even the life of society, civilization, the world. Not even people, just the world. When we look at all that, is it all for a purpose? Or was it created for no reason? But we see that nature doesn't do something without a reason. It's all for a purpose. So where is the purpose? That we exist, or that the world exists. Where is the goal for which to which the world is moving, and the goal that we should achieve? All of that is hidden from us, and there are questions without answers. And this has nothing to do with whether or not you're religious or secular or whatever. If we're talking about nature or about the Creator, we see how everything is done wondrously. The more we research nature, the more we are in awe at what we are discovering. The wonders of laws and the connections between them, the harmonies, the systems, on the one hand. On the other hand, we don't see that the more creatures are complex, that they have, when there's a special sophistication in their operations. Take an animal's body. The wondrous ways by which it exists, all of its internal systems, we don't understand them. The metabolism and the functioning of the brain and the genes and multiplication and behavioral conduct. How nature created all that. But when the body exists, it exists without any purpose. It takes food from the outside secretes waste from within and dies after some time. What's the benefit? Well, what's the purpose for all that? It's incomprehensible. If we're talking about existence, the internal laws that we discover in matter, in physics, in chemistry, genetics, in physiology, we're discovering amazing wisdom. But what is it all for? It seems like it's cut off somewhere, and it's pointless. From there on, it becomes pointless. But that is, unfitting of nature. When you see and you consider all these laws, how everything is done wondrously by cause and consequence. Everything that's built is built for a purpose. And you have billions of things connected in a living organism, but the organism itself, there is no understanding what it exists for. It's as if the whole of nature is pointless. So what? Each act has a purpose, but the whole thing doesn't have a purpose? That's what he's saying, basically. When we look at ourselves, we see that we are corrupted, right? In the end, these wonderful laws and all the subtleties that you have in those microelements and molecules and atoms and genes and the proteins, they built this body, and the body behaves in this horrible manner. It is contrary to the way it's created. It is made. It's made wondrously, and look at the stupidity of its behavior. It's trying to destroy itself without any further purpose of using itself. So again, if we consider nature or the Creator, it doesn't matter what we call it, as he explains in a different article, that you can talk about nature's God's commandments or about nature as the same thing. So when we if we look at it, we see that all of nature's systems acts wondrously, and everything works beneficially from the perspective of love and giving. This is what created life and all the actions. And even when it seems like there's someone who's eating someone else, it is in order to create circulation in nature. If you look at it correctly, then you see that this is how the homeostasis, the harmonious picture, is sustained. So it has to happen this way. So life and death are circles within circles that are built specifically to sustain the whole of nature in the optimal way. Or when we say, what we say about the Creator, that He's benevolent, because that's what we're told. Or that we discover that nature is benevolent. But when we consider ourselves people, contrary to the still vegetative and animate, and we see that we are outside of nature's system. We're trying to hurt each other. If we consider animals' behavior, where it seems that there's one defeating another, that someone is trying to ruin the other or eat others, that's incorrect. If you look at nature correctly, you see that it's all following very strict laws that are rooted in the animal kingdom, and there's never anyone who wants to harm another. They're just using them to survive, to eat. But it's very interesting. There are beautiful films about it, about how wolves struggle with, or maybe lions with lions, in order to maintain their status in the pack. When they fight, they never hurt each other. They threaten, they make a lot of noises, and that's usually the end of it. They never hurt each other. It's only to build the pyramid, the system, the hierarchy. There's nothing in nature that exists to harm another. It's only for the purpose of putting things in order. That's my part, that's your part, I'm greater, you're smaller, and so on. Only man has a desire, a drive, or an inclination to harm others and take pleasure in it. And it's also rooted in nature that when one kills another, it's rooted in nature that they kill them in the optimal way, that they suffer least, as less as possible. So in the end, we see that nature is wonderful, and everyone besides man exists and maintain nature's laws and structures instinctively, except man, who is an exception to the system. He is the worst, and it's specifically because he is the most sophisticated. So, hence the question about man. How come we are so unsuccessful? And how come the eternal Creator produces such operations? Because we are a product of His act. So, how can such a foul product come out of the Creator? So, there are still questions. How come there's a situation where a person enjoys someone else's suffering? What's the pleasure about it? The pleasure about it is a result of the breaking of the vessels. As a result of the breaking of the vessels, when the masach was broken, the screen was broken, now I get pleasure in sustaining a broken screen, masach. A broken masach means that the greater I am from others, compared to others, instead of being equal to everyone and serving everyone, instead I enjoy the opposite. It's called a breaking. A breaking means inversion, oppositeness. If, while being in Adam Rishon, we were all serving each other, and we only cared about loving others, and we all wanted to be a part, like a cell or an organ in a body, in a healthy organism, sustaining ourselves only to sustain the whole body. When that was broken, this cell became cancerous, and I only wanted to consume everyone and determine, establish my own opinion above everyone else's. Everyone wants to be greater than others, according to the level of his desire. A small desire doesn't want to be greater than others, perhaps. 90% of the world population are at the animal degree. In other words, they don't want to use others. Just let them be. Give them food, but even at that degree, everyone thinks that he's special. But they don't want to harm others. Whereas a person whose desire is developed, completely developed, enjoys only when the whole world is under him. Yeah, they said that you can't sell a paper that says good news. And with bad news, people enjoy it, even without controlling others. They enjoy seeing others suffer. Why? Yes, because by that they feel higher than others. It fills that will to receive that the broken masach compels them to. We're not just in the will to receive. We have an intention to receive. Meaning, I have to feel, not only that I feel good. To feel good, I can be like an animal. Beyond the animal, I feel good only if I control others. Money, honor, power, knowledge, all of these things I have to be greater than others in them. That's the broken Masach. If the system that we fell from is when I am in a state of giving to everyone, and this is the only law by which I exist, how to give to everyone and how to sustain the whole system. I'm responsible for it. The world depends on me. The world was created for me because I'm responsible for everyone. So, this is the corrected state. That's it. Now, the state of destruction, yes, there's me. In that state, I have to have everyone aimed towards me in a way that I control them. Money is control. Honor is control. Knowledge is control. Power is control. It's all about control. So the whole body works for me. He wrote for me. That's it. Reception. So in my own existence, in this way and in that way, yes, the necessity remains the same animal. But beyond the animal, my inclination here is to bestow, and that's called Adam, man. And here, it's to the contrary. That's the wild ass. It's the opposite. In Hebrew, it says wild man. So the problem isn't the will to receive, it's the intention. It turns out that it's not the care for the necessity, the reception of the minimum that I need to receive. This is not the problem. The problem is attitude toward others, the good and the bad that we're talking about. There's no discussion of what the body needs. The discussion only relates to how I relate to others. It's the only thing you need to focus on. This is the whole Torah. It begins with Arvut, intended only for that, to correct the Masach. The Masach is our attitude towards others. Only that. So if we examine a person, this is all that we need to, this is only measurement by which we need to measure them. Let's say a fat guy needs 5 courses, a thin guy needs a piece of lettuce. Is this good or that bad? If this guy is obese or because he is obese, does he have a greater review to what? It's like that in everything. It's only in our attitude towards others. So that's what he's trying to specifically emphasize here. Item 2. To clear all that up, we need to make some preliminary inquiries. And not, God forbid, where it is forbidden, meaning in his essence, of which we have no perception whatsoever, and thus have no thought of him. But where the inquiry is required, meaning an inquiry in his deeds. As the Torah tells us, know thou the God of thy father and serve him. And as it says in the poem of unification, by your actions we know you. Meaning, to understand ourselves, why and how we exist and were created, what's the process that we experience, and for which purpose we were probably created, and which we will have to achieve voluntarily or involuntarily. Because we see that everything in nature exists in this way and moves that way. So we have to examine not ourselves, because in ourselves we will not understand anything, because we are results. And the whole of nature is a result, a produce. We have to know the reason, the motivation, the engine, what produces and procreates everything that exists in front of us, which is called God, or the Creator. Kabbalists say that we cannot attain the Creator. He's unattainable within our vessels, our kelim. But we, as creatures, can use what we can use. And we can research His actions. Why? Because His actions are us. So if we examine ourselves with respect to Him, if we examine what happened with us, what happened with the whole of nature, just as a realistic, scientific, straightforward research, let's start studying our own nature, but under the assumption that some great mind did it. Call it nature, call it God, whatever. But now let's see what He did it for, or what it did it for. So this kind of inquiry is called by our actions we know you. We can see the actions, we are in a certain world, so let's start examining that. But if we start fantasizing about who is, what is, without actually sensing it in our organs, in our tools of perception, in our understanding, that's philosophy, and we stay away from it, because that's totally, you can't criticize it. It doesn't have a healthy foundation. So let's study the Creator's actions in creation. We don't know the Creator. Yes, He wrote Creator. We don't understand what it is. I want to research creation. How external forces or internal forces, I don't know, but whatever I attain, how they probably act in creation. This is called by our actions, we know, but actual actions out of nature's laws to discover the common law, which is called Creator. Common law, and this is nature's laws. That's what it tells us to focus on. Meaning, no Kabbalah, no wisdom of Kabbalah, no sages, nothing. Let's start, with what is simple. He explains in the preface to the book of Zohar that we have to be completely realistic and relate to everything through common sense. A judge has only what his eyes see. But to build our tool of perception, to understand our limitations, to see where we start imagining and fantasizing and where we actually perceive, because this is our whole lives. So to set the boundaries and research the phenomena in them, this is the wisdom of Kabbalah. It's the most realistic thing. Yes. And then, as a result of this inquiry in nature's actions, or the Creator's actions, which is one and the same, now what does He advise us to inquire? Inquiry number 1. How can we picture a new creation, meaning something new that is not a part of Him, when it is obvious to anyone of right mind that there is nothing that is not a part of Him? Can one give that which one does not have? Inquiry number 2. Meaning, the inquiry is in how was creation ever made, right? Was there a beginning? Because we see that everything has a beginning. If we look back, we start, and we can study according to physics and astronomy, that there was a beginning to our universe. There was a bang, and it started everything. How did this happen? You don't go into spiritual things. I don't know what the forces were before it, but what's something new? It's something that didn't previously exist, and now it does. Even a particle of energy, that particle of energy that contained a whole matter and energy that exists in the universe today, from which everything exploded. What is that thing that scientists think that it happened this way? I just want to know. I want to know what came before me, who I am, and what follows me, what comes after me. In a person, in man, there's this inclination for that. That's why we're human and not beasts. Inquiry number 2. If you say that from the aspect of his almightiness, he certainly can create existence from absence, meaning something new that is not in him, there arises a question. What is that reality that can be conceived, which has no place in him and is completely new? We see that there is an innovation. Where did that innovation come from? From which force? Why did this force that created that innovation, that's something new, why did it decide to do it? I see that everything has a reason. It runs by cause and effect, cause and consequence. So before the bang that created our world, I have to say that there was some kind of force that determined, that decided to create the universe, which is everything that followed. So what is that? Why did it do it? For what purpose? If I examine by this logic, is by our actions we know you. I can ask it, because everything, just like in our sciences, we ask about it. We ask about the reason. There's a cause and a consequence. So what is that force? Why did it decide to create this world? With people, me? That's my question. The force that stands beyond our reality, from which everything was created. What is the renewed creation? What is new about it? What's the difference between what existed before and after? Why did it decide to do it? We're not studying it, but its actions. Yes? Inquiry number 3. It deals with what Kabbalists have said, that one soul is a part of God in such a way that there is no difference between him and the soul, but that he is the whole and the soul is a part. And they compared it to a rock carved from a mountain. Carved from a mountain. There is no difference between the rock and the mountain, except that he is a whole, or it is the whole, and the rock is a part. Thus we must ask, a stone carved from a mountain is separated from it by an axe made for that purpose, causing the separation of the part from the whole. But how can you picture that about him? That he will separate a part of his essence to become separated from him, meaning a soul, to the point that it can only be understood as part of his essence? Meaning a soul? Yeah, I read too fast. There are researchers who attained that they exist in a special reality. And what they exist in that special reality, they are like in a bubble, where outside of them is what they called light, and within them there is light inside, but the difference between the outside and the inside There's like a klipa in there that surrounds them and distinguishes between what exists in them and is what they feel as inside of them and what seems to be outside of them. Of course, in and out, or inside and outside, are things that it's just the way they define it for themselves. But still, because we go by erections, we know you, they go by what they feel. So the same thing that exists on the outside exists on the inside, but there's a wrapping, like a shell, that limits them and makes them somehow separated from what exists on the outside. That's in general. So that part, the internal and external, is called the soul. The difference between the soul and the light is that it is a part in a special wrapping. Yes. Item 3. Inquiry number 4. Since the chariot of the evil side and the shells are at the other end of His holiness, that nothing further remote can be conceived, how can it be extracted and made from holiness, much less that it will sustain it? In other words, there is such a state where this klipa is called sitracha. Why? Because it creates such a distinction between what exists on the outside and on the inside that it completely separates the outside and the inside, so they are completely opposite. How do they feel their oppositeness? This klipa creates that sensation in them. And what is he saying? Since the chariot of the evil side and the shells are at the other end of His holiness, meaning a person feels that here it is all benevolent, and he is the opposite. He's receiving. He's receiving in order to receive. So he feels in the gap between the degrees how he is immersed in this shell, which aims him and controls him and forces him to be only receiving, the opposite of what exists in the outside. What for? It wants him to feel this way, that inside of him he will feel that he is completely opposite from the outside. So there is such a state that the Kabbalists attain. And what else? He doesn't just attain that, the Kabbalist. He also attains that this outside, the benevolent, the light, sustains the klipa too, the shell. It sustains it. It wants it to exist. It wants it to be, to produce fruits, to constantly be there until a person develops within a resolution that this klipa is evil. And then through the hatred towards that klipa, a person breaks it, and it becomes the opposite. It becomes the connection between the inside and the outside. Inquiry number 5. The matter of the rising of the dead. Since the body is so despicable that immediately at birth it is doomed to perish and to be buried. Furthermore, the Zohar said that before the body rots entirely, the soul cannot ascend to its place in heaven while there are still remnants of it. Therefore, why must it return and rise at the revival of the dead? Could the Creator not delight the souls with it without it? Even more bewildering is what our sages said, that the dead are destined to rise with their flaws, so that they will not be mistaken for another. And after that, he will cure their flaws. We must understand why God would mind that they would not be mistaken for another, that for that he would recreate their flaw and then would have to cure it. In the beginning, the 613 desires from which the soul is built have the intention to receive, or are in the intention to receive. This is called the murky body that was put to death because it can't receive the light. It's got no connection with the light because they're completely opposite. Because of the intention, which is to receive. This is why the body is put to death and it is buried, meaning the intention to receive has to depart and be replaced with the intention to bestow. And then that desire is reawakened and becomes suitable for use. And this action of reviving it is called the revival of the dead. So we're talking about the desire within the soul. This is all the soul. Where the 600 and the 613 desires in the soul are called its body. And this body is considered dead because it's in order to receive and it can't receive light. And correcting it to be with the intent to have the intention to bestow is called reviving the dead bodies. So what is okay? Fine. So we said and we asked, we understood what Kabbalah is saying, but what's the point of all that? Of this transition? What do we get from it? We get corrupted qualities. We still have to discover them, and then come to a point where we hate them and want to ruin them, want to escape them. And when we escape them, we return to them afterwards and correct these mistakes and sins that we discover in all these desires. Why do we have to experience this whole process? If that force, the benevolent and almighty force, if it is that way, why can't it create us in a good position to begin with? Why do we have to come to that good position through such a painful and unpleasant and long process? Inquiry number 6, regarding what our sages said, that man is the center of reality, that the upper worlds and this corporal world and everything within them were only created for him, and obliged man to believe that the world had been created for him. It is seemingly hard to grasp that for this trifle human, who grasps no more than a wisp of this world's reality, much less of the upper world, whose height is immeasurable, that the Creator troubled himself to create all this for him. And also, why would man want all that? If we consider, if we look through corporal senses, man is truly the smallest thing that can be in reality. Why? Look at how many flies we have, how many lions we have, how many. Well, man is just man. I don't know what, 7 billion compared to insects or something. Because man is a degree. We can't say man opposite lions. You say man opposite animals in general, the animate level, or the plant level, the vegetative level, or the inanimate still level. Yes, In our pyramid, we are the smallest in quantity. We're small, but in quality, we are at the highest level. That's the pyramid. That's the structure of the pyramid. The greater you are, you're greater in quality, and you're smaller in quantity. That's the law. Hence the question. In our universe, our planet Earth, is, well, invisible. In our solar system, even in our solar system. And on planet Earth, what are we? All kinds of natural forces are about to appear that will make us see how small and weak we are. Totally miserable, pathetic creatures can't handle any natural phenomenon. We're living on a planet where there's a fire inside, and there's a very, very thin crust that separates us from it. And this crust can break any moment, and then what? What are we? We're talking about quantity and physical forces. But if we're talking about quality, then again we're in a pyramid. We don't understand how vast and how important this pyramid is. Our power is not in our quantity, but in the quality. And in quality, Kabbalists are saying, we are the center. This part is the center part. Man is the center of the world. It is nature's fruit. It's a bad fruit, and it has to bring itself to a good state. And in that, it achieves perfection. So never consider what happens with corporal eyes. The great people, weapons, the power, it's all we can see throughout history. That none of that determines anything. So don't be impressed by it or alarmed by it. Everything follows only internal forces that exist in nature. But it follows spiritual forces. These are the forces that make the difference, and they determine the whole process. This is why the inquiry isn't just an inquiry over what's the place of this tiny man. It's about finding the connection, the formula between the ratio between quantity and quality, and why does it appear to us in this conspicuous manner that the quantity is basically nothing, and the quality is immense, godly. This trifle man, who is no more than a wisp of this world's reality, much less of the upper worlds, if we're talking about our present powers, the power that we can use now. But still, everything is built for us, and we are at the center. So the question is, what do I need it all for? I don't feel that I belong to this universe and to the worlds and the stars, all the more so to the spiritual worlds. So what do I need all that for? But people who see the whole of creation say it's all built for me. I don't need it. It's got nothing to do with it. It's built for you, so you have to know it and you have to run it. What can you do? Regrettably, they're right, and we don't have a choice except to research all of that and understand that we are at the center of creation, like Malchut Ein Sof, which is at the center of Ein Sof, and we are the centermost point of Malchut Ein Sof. So, once the all the forces of creation are focused, centered on us, now it depends on what we do in how we balance creation. If we don't, this imbalance will come back at us, and then we are the most sensitive in creation, and we will experience that imbalance. So we'll be forced to do what is required without any choice. Does that mean that when we are corrected and have the right intention, we will have access to all the planets and the whole universe? The more a person ascends in spirituality, the more he becomes distant from corporeality in actual fact, because his actions become or acquire a more qualitative level. So what does he care about these planets? You will find nothing in them. We discovered that perhaps there's water on Mars. Well, so what? Well, I understand it's interesting. Could be interesting to someone. But if I discover that in this whole universe there's nothing more than inanimate, than still matter, and only planet Earth is a place where there's corporal life, so that from it to achieve spiritual life, then why do I need to fly to all these distances? What does that give me? So what does it mean that it's all created for man? Now we have to understand that that we are within this immeasurable number of tons of inanimate, is a projection of spirituality. In spirituality, these forces have the same hierarchy. You have the speaking, you have the animate, you have the vegetative, and the still. And this hierarchy in the Yud Kei Vav Kei comes to us from spirituality. If I correct my attitude in spirituality, corporeality will rise up to a spiritual degree too. It's integrated in me to the point that it vanishes. These corporal phenomena are only in my senses because I haven't corrected myself. When I correct myself spiritually, my corporeality becomes corrected too and disappears from the way I feel it now. So why research lower things than me if I'm dependent on, and according to the purpose of creation must connect to higher things than me? It's unclear. This direction is incorrect. My goal is to achieve the spiritual speaking through all of these worlds which are in themselves still vegetative, animate, and spiritual speaking, and then God through the Havaya to get to Keter, to the tip of the Yud. So why decline to the planets? What is in them? And I will understand it myself whether I want to or not, because my spiritual attainment will give me, will create projection in me of lower degrees too. So it'll be pointless to research these planets. I remember myself as a child how I was fascinated by it, how I wanted to know and to understand and to feel what it's like to be there. To be next to these planets. But the spiritual sensation gives you a sensation of what's happening there, and you'll see that you have nothing to look for there. Your goal is always to be closer to the achap of the upper one. So you're not attracted to it anymore. You just see it's a projection of spirituality. And this proportion of still vegetative, animate, and speaking is the same as the forces that exist in spirituality, in the Havaya. From the spiritual Havaya to the corporal Havaya. Yes, you are. my question is this. He asks 6 questions. And if you take a question in this world, of a person in this world, and that person looks around him, he can determine only 2 questions for himself. Right? The rest of the questions are relying on axioms that he can't achieve by himself. Well, right, yes. The question is, it depends on what you call it. Either he calls it the creator or calls it nature. It doesn't matter. He explains it in a different place. In which article? The piece, huh? Right. Okay. That using the word creator or nature or laws or mitzvot, it's all the same. So you can rewrite it in such a way that everyone will understand it, regardless of religion or anything. So how can you talk about the revival of the dead or the soul? Well, that's very simple. If I correct my kelim, if I study myself, I see that I'm different from nature. And that's exactly what's appearing now. I'm different from nature because I'm bad and the whole of nature is relatively good. That's how it seems to me. It's balanced, and man is the only cause. And now in ecology or everything. If I correct myself, everything will change. That's it. And with this we conclude. No? Yeah. Okay, we invite you to stay with us after the lesson and watch Good Morning, the morning show that will start today with much light and hope. Ask the Kabbalist questions to what you always wanted to know. Today, Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Israel time. It is broadcast on Channel 98 on television and on the Kabbalah channel on the internet. You can ask questions through www.kab.tv or at 1-700-509-209. Every Sunday at 4 p.m. at Cab TV, there is a live broadcast of Rav Leitman's virtual lesson in Hebrew, English, French, Spanish, Russian, English. And this concludes the lesson. Have a good day.